I think we even said like gun, the conversation of, owning a gun.
So if you lived in a different community, a different issue might be more.
Immigration. I don't think you or I are as affected by many in our country negatively or positively by immigration.
Which do you think should form it more, faith or culture?
I think faith. And I think that comes down to how you choose to live your life. And I think that also comes back to...
Welcome to Talk 4, where we have successfully solved the problem of politics and religion. I'm Brian Oakes, and I'm entering this series of conversations from the Christian pastoral viewpoint, sitting with my friend Andy Suggs.
Hello. I guess I best represent the non-organized religious upbringing, more of a Gnostic or seeker in my journey.
Who knew that it just took the two of us coming together to chat?
Yep.
Today I was really just kind of landing the plane. I don't know if how you're coming into this, if there's anything specifically on the surface on your mind.
No, I mean, I've kind of gone back and thought about our conversations as well. I'm not obviously an educated or schooled religious person, so I can't reference passages or different stories. So it's been educational in many aspects of some of the things you shared. I don't think Christianity is innately right or left. I think humanity makes it one way or the other to give credence to their position on certain stances. And I think that's why even when we were talking about certain topics, we're like, well, if you think about it this way, it leans left, but if you think about it this way, it's more right. And I just feel like it becomes left or right when people, and I've used this phrase, I think, in every conversation, when people weaponize religion.
Are you saying that someone has a political viewpoint, and then to reinforce their political viewpoint, they try to underwrite it with Christianity?
Exactly. Yeah,
okay.
I do. Because I think it's like, listen, this is what the Bible said. So it's taking it off of their responsibility, of their stance, That's always been my wife calls me the wannabe Libra, but it's like you watch those detective shows or those court case shows, and you see the closing arguments from like, oh my gosh, they're guilty, and then you hear this like, oh my gosh, they're innocent, and it's almost the same thing with me with religion. It's like I hear one, if you want to call it one side's argument, I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that, totally do, and then I hear the other's like, yeah, I totally get that. I think the conversations we're having are happening because people are using religion to support their stance. And I think even when we've been talking about like the topics we feel are more pertinent to that conversation, and when you really drill it down, it's like that comes down to our local community and how our lives are day to day. I think we even said like gun, the conversation of owning a gun.
So if you lived in a different community, a different issue might be more.
Immigration. I don't think you or I are as affected by many in our country negatively or positively by immigration.
Which do you think should form it more, faith or culture?
I think faith. And I think that comes down to how you choose to live your life. And I think that also comes back to, I personally feel God is greater than one religion. And I feel that you can see that in how around the world so many people have a loving relationship with God through their journey, their path they grew up around, they were exposed to, they were taught, they found, they embraced. And I personally feel that and we've talked about this before, if a kid was raised in some remote country and only had an exposure of a few thousand people and only knew of one religion and one God, and it happened to not be Christianity, I personally don't feel God would point at that person, that kid, that child, go, you're wrong. I think it's everybody has their own path, and as long as you have a loving relationship with God, that's how you choose to live your life. And I'm not here to tell you you're right or wrong.
I think that's where my frustration in this process has been, because that question, how do you have a loving relationship with God? How do you know you have that? And my frustration is, and this comes somewhat from my own philosophy of relationships, and that I think that these 9 topics that we've been talking about have value. I definitely think they have value.
Yeah.
And I think that they're very important, but they are not the thing.
No.
And the thing is what you just said. How do I have a relationship with God? How do I know I have a relationship with God? Who is God? What is he like? Can he be trusted? And how do I grow in a relationship with him? And gun rights and education and abortion and gay rights, all of those things flow out of that.
100% agree.
But they are not the thing.
No.
And I have been so frustrated in this process, not with you or with any person individual, but because the nature of what we have leaned into, what we agreed to talk about, was these tributaries.
They're divisive.
I do think that, like you just said, faith should inform it, not culture informing those things. But I think what's more important is to lean in on, how do I have a relationship with God, and what is that like?
I think the difference in cultures, I think that has a greater impact on your day-to-day of what's going on around you. The people you communicate, the decisions you make on, where you spend your time. But I think when you're at home by yourself in your own mind, having that personal relationship with God, that's the core of who you are as an individual. I'm thinking, obviously, we're in the middle of the election, and
oh gosh,
it's all this, you get one ad you listen to, and then the next ad is from the counter side, and they basically say everything you just heard was a lie, and this is what they think, or this is what they're doing. And when you can't push a segment of society to align with you based on your own personal beliefs, then I feel that's where religion comes in. So if you don't believe me, this is what the Bible said. So don't listen to me, listen to God.
Yeah, it's interesting because Scripture does make it very clear. And there's some fascinating things in Scripture where rulers who are terrible rulers are put in place through the divine hand. Mm-hmm. And God is in control. Mm-hmm. God is in control of situations that we don't request. And I was with some guys early this morning, and one of them was praying, Lord, whatever is the outcome, teach us to trust you.
Yeah.
Teach us to trust you in that. And back to your comment, faith should inform those 9 things. But what if those 9 things don't line up with my beliefs, my preferences, the outcomes of them?
I guess I would also say to somebody, do you really, again, depending on what you feel happens when you pass away, if there is truly a judgment situation where your life was reviewed, do you feel like you're going to walk up and they go, okay, so what was your perspective on education? Okay, well, gun control. Do we really think that those are going to be the things that define?
Yeah, right.
But I think coming back to the purpose of this final chat, I think the conversations have been great. It hasn't changed how I feel, but I do feel like.
Did you think it would?
No, that's a fair question. I honestly, I didn't ask myself if I thought it would come.
I didn't think we had designed it to be that.
I mean, I think if anything, maybe I could have come out of this again more open to other conversations, and
hopefully, I have loved our previous conversations. I mean, that's what I wanted, and my fear is that some of the people listening to this are waiting for Andy to prove Brian wrong, or for Brian to prove Andy wrong.
I'm getting to that next.
Okay. Well, but to me, like, we leaned in not to do that. We leaned in to say, hey, we've had a really healthy conversation over years. You know, case in point, there's been a couple things you've said where I've wanted to been like, well, hang on, I don't know, I agree with that. Even this morning, I'm like, okay, maybe I can just shut my mouth and keep listening.
Right. Sure. Well, and I think that that's part of what's going on. I mean, even in marriages, it's difficult to sometimes just stop and listen versus building your argument in your head for why that person's wrong rather than listening. And I know that those are things I have to work on. And I think that when you listen to people debate in the political scene, or even within religious conversations, people don't truly listen. I feel that that's one thing that we're able to do, and why we've always had, I feel like, very civil, healthy conversations, is we're not telling each other why the other person's wrong. We're just kind of informing each other of why we believe what we believe. But I think both of us, or at least I can't speak for you, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that.
Don't you dare.
I'm not going to say, I know. I don't know. So how can I, if I don't truly know if I'm right or wrong, choose to live a life where I'm saying that other people aren't right? That's not my place.
There's a really cool passage in Corinthians that says, now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we shall see fully. And it's just giving you this idea of everything you see has an obscurity. You're looking through clouded glass.
Oh, absolutely.
And everything, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that again is one of the things that the takeaways that's also, I mean, in a weird way, I mean, gosh, I'm not in any way encouraging for this to speed up, but like, I'm anxious to see what's next.
What do you mean? Like
when you
pass?
Yeah. Like that clarity,
Mm-hmm.
that awareness, where it all comes together. And you're like, oh, okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that there's so much that our human brains can't wrap our heads around. And I personally feel that that's where a lot of the kind of divisive conversations have happened, is like, we try to humanize or take topics and relate it to our daily lives, and that's where we mess it up. But again, that's my belief.
You said you were getting to something next.
I was kidding. I said before I was going to tell you were wrong. I was going to pull the curtain back. Yeah, you have to be so guarded now in how you talk. There was someone in my life recently who we were talking about America and the growth of our country, and she said, do you think, we're talking about the 50s or 60s, and she said, do you really think America was better, like the greatest country then? I was like, yeah, I do. And she goes, so you think it was okay that woman couldn't do this, woman couldn't do that? And I was like, no. That's not what you asked me. What could America have been better? Absolutely. But it also was a foundation for a lot of change. I mean, you think about between, racism and women's rights, how things have changed. And I think that, to me, justifies why America has been a great country, because it's allowed for that to happen. But that's like, whether it's politics or religion, you say one thing, so then people start connecting dots that are not meant to be connected.
Yeah. I think politics is a half measure. I think if you have your belief, the central piece is not your political view, or shouldn't be.
Right.
And what we've discovered is that at times it is for people, and that's wrong. That your central should be your beliefs, which should inform your politics. But that's only the half measure, because if you're really going to have a belief in which you're saying love is external of me. I don't get to choose what love is. Love comes from God. God defines the parameters of love. God defines the parameters of relationships. He's sovereign. He's over all things. He holds all things together. And I believe that who God is ought to inform my political views. But then what do I do when my obscurities don't come to reality? That's the half. Then the second half is, how do I live in the space in which my beliefs are still true? God is still before the foundations of the world. He still is mandating what love is. And it's not happening the way I thought it should. And a different person is in power. A different system is going on. What do I do with the former? And how do I relate to people in that? And does that external still get to govern me? Or do I back up and say, oh, now I'm going to lean on my political view. Now my political view is more important. No, the original piece of love being external is so much more important after we go past politics and we find out that next Thursday, when all is said and done, how does that external deity mandate? What does it mandate? Because I guarantee you everybody is going to have something that they're not happy with.
Oh, absolutely.
And we did not create ourselves.
Right.
And how we relate to each other should not be by that political view.
I completely agree with everything you just said. The other thing I would add to that is I think love is internal too.
How so?
Loving yourself.
Oh, okay.
And I think that many who struggle with decisions they're making internally look to religion to help them kind of come to a place of a choice. I'm not saying everybody, but I think there are people. I mean, you hear about religious leaders who are very anti-homosexual and preaching it to, then you find out they had a secret homosexual life. It's like, okay, well, and how many do we not know about,
Then what happens when that fails?
Oh,
What happens when your religious leader fails and it turns out dude's a hypocrite?
Right.
What happens when your political leader fails or when the election fails?
That's why I think it comes back to you and your journey and your personal place, where the decisions you make every day. Because I think when you start to assign, I mean, it's stupid, but it comes back to like even in my career, like with marketing and advertising, like if you're going to pick a spokesperson to assign your brand to, you got to be very careful. I mean, you think about what happened with Jared and Subway, and if you as a brand are assigning yourself to this personality, you as a human being are assigning yourself to this religious leader. What happened? It's the same thing. If that person turns out to have been lying, it wasn't what you thought.
And it train wrecks people.
It does, absolutely.
And that's why, I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase church hurt. A lot of times what happens is and marriage is the same way, relationships. Anytime we slide a person, an organization, or something into that central orbiting piece, if you hold a bike tire by the valve stem and swing it, it's going to tear your wrist, the bike, everything. It's not designed for that. And put your presidential candidate, put your spouse, put your job, put politics into that piece, it will fail.
I think in the end, when it comes down to is Christianity right or left, I don't think it is. I think we as humans make it right or left.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's been enjoyable. I'd love to see us pick another topic and continue this.
What would we do? What would we do next?